So I'm making a video about how to fix handle sets from Emtek that have sagging handles, where essentially you have a handle set like this where the handle is sagging down after a few years, and it's eventually going to hang down so much that it prevents the door from being able to latch closed. I had this issue a year or so ago and had a hard time finding information online about the repair of this. I had to kind of figure it out myself. So I wanted to show you guys how to repair it and where to find the parts for it. Essentially, I've taken this handle set off already just by removing the screws on the face plate, and I'm going to show you how to fix the spring in here, to replace the spring in order to prevent the handle from sagging and make it essentially like a new handle, and save quite a bit of money, since replacing this can be $80 to $200. So the handle sets are supported by a spring that brings the handle, the solid brass handle, back to neutral, parallel with the ground. The mechanism for this is a torsion spring like this that allows the handle to be turned and then twists. As it's twisted, it creates tension and then brings the handle back to neutral by the tip of that spring sitting on top of a little bar within the handle set. So essentially, you have to take off all of these little plates on here and the spring in order to get to that spring, which is right at the bottom of those plates. It's relatively simple. It just requires paying attention to what order everything is in. So I'm actually going to show you the outside handle just because it's simpler to understand than the inside handle. The inside handle is actually, everything is held down by this bar, so you have to take the hex screw out of this, pull the bar out, then the spring, then the plates. On this one, we just have to take the plates off, which makes it a little bit simpler to do and to understand. So what we're going to do first, they all have this collar around them, which helps to hold everything together. So there's a little lip under this black part here, which the collar sits around. This is actually the hardest part usually, trying to pry this off. A lot of times I'll use a screwdriver just to kind of open this up and then slide it over the collar. So essentially I take one screwdriver, kind of holding this little collar piece in place, and then push around on the other end of it to spread it apart, and eventually take it, pull it off out from under that neck underneath the black part. It's kind of challenging. You do kind of bend the collar out of shape, but it essentially just has to sit underneath that neck to keep the other washers in place. So it's not super important that it be tight. And you can always take a pair of pliers and pinch it back once you get it underneath that. So then you pull off the washers, and you can see the spring underneath there that's sitting in place. And so that spring basically just comes straight out. You just basically pop it out like that, and it will be replaced by the new spring, and essentially you just put it on there, put it underneath that little piece. Oops, back part fell out. Make sure that this stuff stays in place behind it, and you can kind of see how it just fits right in the grooves there. And then you get this spring on there, and then you just kind of take a screwdriver and lift the spring up over the little bar there. If you grip underneath, push this all the way through, it will push this out, which will keep it from the spring from slipping off over top. And you just take a screwdriver and just lift it over this and then over on top, and then you essentially will put these silver washers back over top, keeping it in place after you replace the spring. And then you take this collar and fit it under the groove, which you can see right there over top the washers. So just holding it all together, you take the collar, and you might have to spread the collar a little bit apart in order to get it to slide around, but you can see it kind of fitting under that groove, and holding those washers in place so that they don't slide off. So I took a pair of pliers and grabbed both ends and gently spread them apart, and then started the collar around the neck of that, and now I'm just going to squeeze it right over, keeping it under the little lip there. And then I just take both ends after it's around that neck and pinch the collar back together. And that will keep those springs and the washers in place. And you probably wouldn't want to do this too many times, because I can imagine that you probably would stress out this collar and eventually weaken it enough to break it, but this seemed to work. So then your handle, the spring is back underneath that little lip, washers are on top, collar is around the neck holding it in place, making sure that this thing is underneath to stop it from continuing to spin around, and it's all fixed. Then you can put it back on the door, put the screws back in place, and you're done. This is the spring that you need in order to fix the sagging doorknob problem. It sells on eBay and Amazon for about $12.